buzzing around your airwaves for the last 10 years or so. With me to help demystify this and help us understand, get the insight that is attached to this subject is Mr. Chris Otieno. Thank you very much. Chris is a security expert with a long list of things that he does on the side and on the mainstream. He'll be helping us understand this a little bit better. We also have Cindy Kube. Cindy, thank you very much. She's an environmentalist as well. You also wear many hats.
Yes, I do.
We are filled with brilliance right here on this table. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
Thank
Asante sana. Cindy, plain and simply, what is climate change for those of us who don't quite understand what this means? What is climate change?
Well, climate change is a very big word, but I just want to simplify it to the local man so that they can understand what it means. It's the long-term shift of temperature and the weather patterns, and this is the things that are happening in our environment. It's our day-to-day activities, and the shift happens. It takes a long time. It's not something that happens just. It's not you don't just wake up and climate change is here. It's something that has taken years and years, and this is as a result of human activities. And as we can see, it leads to floods, it leads to the rising of temperatures. And an example is July. July has actually been the hottest month across the country, across the world. And this is really alarming. It's no longer about global warming, it's global boiling. Like the planet is on fire.
No longer global warming.
Yes.
Global boiling.
Boiling.
Wow.
Yeah, and it is affecting us. It is affecting the woman in the village. It's affecting indigenous communities, indigenous youth, and also everyone. And
sorry, Cindy, you're actually a member of an indigenous community.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and how your community in particular has been affected by climate change.
Well, I am from the Ogiek indigenous community, and the Ogiek community is a hunter-gatherer community, and they live in the Mau Forest in Kenya, and we have been victims of countless evictions from our ancestral land. Our ancestral land is Mau Forest, and this evictions has affected our lives, and it has also affected our capacity to respond to the effects of climate change. How? Because the solutions of climate change are in the forest. The solutions are born in the forest, and when it comes to responding to this climate change, we need to have a space to enjoy and practice our traditional knowledge. We need to also have where we can practice our traditional practices.
And that's not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Right.
And
how does that affect your relationship with your neighbors, the other communities that live around the Ogiek?
The eviction, it has led to a lot of insecurity, leading to a lot of violence. Since the other communities, we're neighbors with the Maasai community and also members with the Kalenjin community. It leads to a lot of violence where they come, and it leads to things like cattle rustling. It leads to women are being raped as a result, and also children are also being children are dropping out of school because these communities they come and destroy the livelihoods of the Ogiek community.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
and they're also encroaching. They're the ones who are destroying the very forest.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. Chris, climate change,
Yeah.
security. Who knew there was a connection? Help us understand this a little deeper.
There is an actual convergence between security issues and climatic change. Now, when you look at global environmental and ecological degradation as well as climate change, we are saying that this is going to result to multiply effects. And these multiply effects will include things like competition for resources, economic distress, and social discontent amongst nations and amongst individuals. When we have a lot of pressure on this, for example, if one side of a nation is too dry, they will migrate to the next border. When they are crossing that border, you will see a lot of security operations
Like
going on in there. Like what she has just said, a lot of things going on in there. For example, there'll be profiling. We'll say, guys, because you are migrating to our community and you guys are more or less criminal-minded, we're not going to allow you here. That will bring in a lot of conflict. You know? If you go further to the global arena, for example, naval operations, they are dependent on the seas and the masses of waters, right? So if there are rising sea levels, because of water environment degradation and what contributes to that has happened. Right. Then you find that telecommunications and military interventions or military presence for the protection of their national interests becomes impeded.
Wow.
Even military exercises and testing of weapons become completely impeded. And that means a lot of things. Look at what happened in Pakistan, the floods in Pakistan. What did that translate into the national security budget of Pakistan? It meant that more and more rescue operations from the military or from security forces,
These were not planned, they were not budgeted for.
they were not budgeted for, instantaneous.
Huge.
We are here. Huge cost, huge cost. Look at France, they're spending about 30 billion US dollars in their financial budget per year.
Wow.
For environmental activities and climate change prevention activities, right? So we are looking at, in the near future, what we are forecasting, that because Africa is a hub of natural resources, which can be impeded by changes in the climate, we are saying that we will see more and more African countries campaigning to have the aid packaging, being converted to financing packaging.
I see.
Right? Meaning basically, what do we do in Africa? We now start the conversion process because of the economic effect that environmental degradation or climate change will have had on us. And that means more and more military requirements, more security requirements.
When you listen to such a damning perspective, when you look at what we're going through, there's a question that a lot of people would ask. African countries generally do very little compared to Western countries when it comes to the causing climate change.
Yeah.
Why are we paying the most for something we contributed the least to?
Well, because climate change is a global problem. Like when the global emissions happen in China, we share the same atmosphere. So when there are global emissions in China, it leads to a lot of things here in Kenya. It leads to the melting of ice caps in Mount Kenya, which leads to floods. It also leads to let's talk about the things that happen in Lake Victoria,
Right.
the killing, the death of the fish in the fish cages. It leads to food insecurity. It also leads to a lot of environmental degradation, and because of a lot of deforestation here in Kenya. Like I'll just talk about my home in Mau Forest.
Right.
Mau Forest has lost. There are no more trees because they are cutting a lot of the indigenous trees, which are the carbon sinks of the entire planet.
What do you mean when you say carbon sinks?
Carbon sinks. The trees absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and this carbon dioxide is what leads to climate change.
Right.
So when there are no trees to absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, it leads to things like floods. It leads to
Right.
drought. It leads to change of temperatures. It leads to food insecurity. It also leads to which in turn affect the lives of women, of youth, indigenous communities,
Yeah.
and all these vulnerable communities. Yeah.
So now, Chris,
Yeah.
a person who lives in a place like the Mau Forest,
Yes.
or in Machakos, where one of our reporters, Monambai, was preparing something for us, you're faced with a dilemma, two choices:
Yes.
to make money and live and feed your family,
Yeah.
or to protect the environment. And sometimes those two choices are opposed to each other.
Yes.
How does one balance? One would argue that the Western nations have the luxury of wealth. They can cushion their citizens. We don't have that, or as much of that. How do we navigate that?
If you look at it, Victor, if you look at the actual sense, Africa is a hub of resources, natural resources. And these natural resources, for them to be extracted, for example, fossil fuel, for it to be extracted, there's got to be some activities that have an environmental impact on getting them up to the surface for proper utility.
Right.
So we are saying that no country or no person is immune to environmental, or there's no vaccine to environmental or degradation or climate change. So what needs to be done is for us to understand that the activities of today will not affect today, but will affect tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So there needs to be more and more deliberate actions towards improving our environment. Before we undertake any activity, environmental impact assessment will be critical. Yeah? And when we find that the criticality of the activity we're going to do in that environment goes beyond the possibility of us sustaining that activity for some long time, then it becomes imperative and common knowledge that we need to stop that activity, right? And you've said something very critical here, right? We have the list of activities. Our green gas emission is about 0.5%, but we pay the hugest amount, and that is completely an injustice to Africa. Right. Yeah? And you've seen some African presidents starting to argue it's time for you guys to stop importing raw materials from Africa because of the effect. Yeah, so they do that in our countries. They demand a lot from us in terms of greenhouse emissions and carbon credits and things like that. But in actual sense, you find that these activities are more related to what they need to finance or to support the industrial production.
Now, clearly something needs to shift, Chris and Cindy. Can we talk about some of the things that people at home can do? Communities, groups such as the ones you're part of, they can rally around and do to help save their planet, while the big politicians are wrangling and negotiating in boardrooms and in the conferences. What can people on the ground do, for example?
Yeah. All these solutions must be community-driven and they must be community-owned. This means that the people in the boardroom need to come to the community and learn from them. Okay. They should not just come and hand over these solutions. And I'll call these solutions, they're all false solutions, because the real solutions are with the communities.
Tell me some of the...
I'm going to give...
Yes, please.
Yes, an example.
Yes.
An example of these practices is is to ensure that there is an intergenerational knowledge transfer from the older generation to the younger generation. Right. And this intergenerational knowledge transfer will only be done when the communities are in the ancestral home and they're living in harmony with the environment. Our ancestors used to know how to conserve the environment. You cannot teach my grandmother how to take care of her compound or how to clean her area. She knows, it's in her fingertips. I'll just give an example of one practice that we do at our community with regards to preservation of food, to ensure that there is no food insecurity. And we use ash to preserve food.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, wow. We do, and we're also trying to document these traditional knowledge practices that respond to the effects of climate change. By responding to the effects of climate change, this is regards to food insecurity, deforestation. How do they check the weather patterns? Like how do you know that this is the right way of conserving the environment? And this is through having conversations with your grandmother on how to do this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So the solutions are actually with us.
Yeah,
we just need to perhaps go back to our roots.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the biggest solutions, Victor, is renewable energies, which is really part and parcel of our living, right? Contributes very little to to temperature increase, right? So there must be that deliberate reduction in the high cost of capital investment for renewable energies to scale up investment in loss and damages, right? And that can be done in Africa. Why? I am saying so because Africa has about 60% in terms of potential for solar systems, for solar energy.
We have the free sun, the sun.
Exactly.
And actually,
so if we put more investment in that, by reducing capital investment, then you find that one way or the other, it will be a spiral effect or chain effect in reducing global warming.
We're actually doing something about it.
Yes,
Cindy.
I beg to differ with my colleagues.
Please,
because renewable energy is actually not a solution. It's a false solution because I have seen very many communities who have been evicted from their lands in the name of renewable energy. They're coming to build renewable energy plants on their territories. So in turn, the cost of developing renewable energy plants is not sustainable to the environment. The only way that renewable energy can make sense, can be a solution, is when they're doing all these environmental impact assessments, and they're also consulting the communities that live there to ensure that they're benefiting from this solution. So that is the only way that renewable energy can be a solution to responding to
what I'm
climate
hearing
change.
you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we, in our haste to correct the situation, we don't want to replace one monster with another.
Yes.
I see. Chris and Cindy,
yes.
We are absolutely pleased to have you on board. I'd like you guys to give us a few more solutions that people can do. So you did say something. You said a lot of these solutions have got to be community-owned and community-led.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about individual responsibility. What can we do? There's somebody who's watching us right now and is wondering, yes, I will plug into a community, I will plug into a project, but what can I do in my own capacity as a single Kenyan? What can I do?
You can
Wangari is
work-
my little thing.
Yeah.
So what's my little thing? Somebody's asking.
Well, I have so many little things.
Please.
First is to work together. We need to work together because this is a global problem and we need to be united to respond to the effects of climate change. And we also need to plug into these communities, these indigenous communities, into these indigenous solutions. And we need to support them either financially, technically, or technical support, personal support, and financial resources. Because to respond to all these problems, you need resources. And it starts, supporting a community starts with me and you, with the little that you have. Support a group that is doing great things to responding to the effects of climate change and protecting the environment. And it also, on a personal level, I just say it, wherever you are, you need to protect and take care of the environment that is around you. You need to at least plant a tree. Not plant a tree, I'd say grow a tree.
What's the difference?
Planting a tree is just planting and leaving it there. You're just taking photos and just going home.
Right.
You need to plant and protect it and grow it. Like it's like growing up. You need to nurture a tree,
Right.
nurture a forest, protect your environment. Teach your children about environmental conservation. Ensure that you're documenting all this indigenous knowledge because with time everything is getting extinct. Our animals are we're no longer seeing the white rhinos, we're no longer seeing all these things. So we need to ensure that we are protecting the environment that we live in and at least grow it, nurture
I love
a
that.
tree.
I think we've learned the difference between planting a tree and growing a tree, and clearly one is better.
Yeah.
Chris, from where you sit, what are some of the things that we can do? I feel you're tickled by that. What are some of the things we can do?
Victor, when I said about erecting solar panels, I was very clear in that we don't put them where there are populations, all right? We have vast spaces where we can tap solar energy. So that those two must be worked together. But when talking about these reductions or solutions, our focus must be on our developmental policies. We put a lot of, we are an agricultural community society as a nation, isn't it? And we do a lot for our agriculture. So our development policy around agriculture, right, must be that of sustainability. Clear sustainable development goals, very clear, right? That will support and ensure that we are conserving our environment at all costs, isn't it? Like the policy we used some time ago, you fall one tree, you plant about, it was 100 or 10. Again, that very good
You cut
policy.
one, you plant
plant
10.
10.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plan on. If we do those kind of sustainable goals, then we can see that some activities will be going or be directed towards that. Then when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, right? A lot of activities are Western-based, right? There needs to be financing to reduce these activities. So we must change our mindsets as the vulnerable population that takes a major hit on greenhouse emission comes with it, to that population that looks upon finances to convert all these into something that we can sustain and really give an environment a very good solution to it being sustainable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got a quick one. I want both of you to, I'll give you a moment to think about it, but I want you to come up with something. And I want you to talk to, your camera is that one, and Chris, your camera is the one directly across. I want you to speak to our people in 10 words or less. Give one rallying call, one thing that's in your heart that you wish to share about climate change to our people as we wind up. Good people, this has been a conversation on climate change, and we've seen how it relates to your security. We've been challenged to do something, to not just plant a tree, but to grow it. And we have our people here. Who wants to go first? Who's ready?
Lady first.
Ladies first. Cindy. Or they say ladies first, men before.
Yes, men before.
Please, men before. Let's start with you. We finish the best for last.
Yes.
My rallying plea.
That's your camera. Speak to the people.
My rallying plea globally would be that let us go into saving humanity, spend more in saving humanity, and spend very little in wars.
Wow. Well said. Cindy, there's your camera. Talk to your people.
Well, I can see that we were sharing the same thoughts. People over profit and the planet, for the planet. And also keep our leaders accountable to their actions and all their commitments, because when we go to all these climate change conferences, they're always making all these commitments to respond to the effects of climate change. So we all need to keep our governments accountable and our leaders. And by our leaders, we mean the local leaders, your local MCA, your local chief, and all the way to the president. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much. Clearly, a little goes a long way. The little thing that you do makes a big punch on the big impact or big punch on the big problem. I'll tell you something about somebody who lands a big punch. Wanyonyi. The punch from across our borders was unfortunately silenced by another punch. This time from the western part of Kenya. Wanyonyi is in the building. The show that's coming up right now is VAR with our very own Ahmed Bahaj. The pugilist, the boxer is in the building. Good people, you heard it. People over profits for the planet. And you said, make more.
Spend on humanity.
Spread on humanity.
Spend less
on wars. My name is Victor Muyakane. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you this evening on the Daily Report and Insight Tonight. Let's meet another time on Thursday for another conversation around climate change. This